Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, what we're going to do is get some practice with IAM. So what I want to do is I want to go over to our IAM user. I have one called AWS Examples. You can use whatever you like. You can create a new user if need be. But what I'm going to do is go ahead into my AWS Examples. And this one already has permission for admin. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And what I want to do is I want to lock down this user so that it can't really do a whole lot. But what it can do is change its own permissions. And that way we'll be able to experience what it's like trying to access something, not having access, updating the policy and making it more restrictive. And I want you to get an idea of like what the anatomy of an IAM policy is. And so that's what I'm hoping that we get some good experience with here. So now that we've removed all our permissions, we're going to have to go ahead and add permissions. And specifically, we're going to create an inline policy. I'm going to go and to JSON because we really want to get more practice utilizing the policy editor. The nice thing is it will kind of tell you some suggestions here, but for the most part, we'll be using gitpod and writing our own policy. But anyway, what we need here is we want to give it access to IAM, and so I'll just go ahead and say, give me access to everything. And I'm not sure if we're going to need access to STS, but I'm going to go ahead and just do that as well. We'll just say all actions for STS for everybody. And so that should put us in good shape. So let's go ahead and just double check this as it's complaining. I think here's just saying like, hey, we don't recommend doing wildcards. That's totally fine. We'll call this one IAM policy playground. Okay, and we'll create that policy. So now that policy should be attached to that user. I'm going to go over to AWS Examples, and I'm launching this up in Gitpod. You can use whatever you like, but understand the configuration is going to be a little bit different. You'll have to establish your credentials and create a connection to AWS. So let's give this a moment to launch up. I actually recently was having issues with Gitpod. And so in some videos, you'll see me complaining about it, saying it's not working. But what I found out was that I had two extensions installed that were that had the same thing. So if you do run into problems with Gitpod, you can always disable all extensions and see if that resolves your issue. But usually the issue will be with browser-based extensions. If you saw what was happening in my other videos where things were hanging up, you will definitely see them in some videos. But that's fine. We end up using code spaces or something else in some videos. I'll go ahead and type clear here. I'm again just waiting for all these extensions to load. While they're loading, I'm going to go ahead and just test our CLI. We'll say STS get caller identity. I think this is already configured for AWS Examples. It is. And it's a good thing we gave access to STS. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make that call. But yeah, I'm just going to wait for everything to load. I'm not sure why CodeCloud keeps wanting to install. I'm not using that today. So let's go ahead and uninstall that. It's kind of driving me crazy. But anyway, we'll just wait a little while here for everything to be installed. And yeah, just a moment, okay? All right, so my extensions have loaded. I'm going to go back just up to here. And what I'm going to want to do here is go ahead and go into my IAM directory. And I'm going to make a new folder. I'm just going to call this policy. And we're going to make a new file here called policy.yaml. I thought it'd be fun to get some practice with YQ. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Brew install YQ. And once YQ is installed, what we're going to be able to do is turn that into JSON dynamically. I'm going to go ahead and just make a README up here and just provide some information. So convert to JSON. And so that would be YQ-O JSON, and then we specify the policy. And then what we can do is convert it over into our JSON file. Let's go ahead and start writing some stuff here. So the way policies work is they always start with version. And so this one's going to be 2012, 1017. Of course, you can write this as JSON, but I just want us to get some practice utilizing YAML where we can and using conversion. There can be multiple statements, so we'll go ahead and write one. The SID is just going to identify what this is. So this one will give us access to S3, access to S3. And then we'll have an effect here. So we'll say allow, we'll have an action here, and then this is going to be all of S3. So we will lock it down to very specific resources, but for now, we're just going to provide it to everywhere. Okay, and so we'll just say for all resources anywhere, S3. And so that's a very basic permission. Sometimes there's a principal in here. It depends if you need to lock this down for a very particular account or user. But right now we're just going to say resources as such. And so that's pretty straightforward as a policy. Let's go ahead and test our conversion here, this one here. And so we can just copy it. I'm going to cd into our IAM directory, our policy directory here, and I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. Let's see if that works. We'll hit enter, and it does convert it over. So it looks pretty good. I don't want to have to remember this constantly, so I'm going to go ahead and just make a new bash file here. And we're just going to bring that command over here. Command, the bash script. And so this one's going to be convert. Okay. And so we'll just go grab this command here. I'm going to need the heading for it. I always forget what it is. So I'm just going to look for one anywhere. I think in S3 we have a lot of bash scripts. We did a lot in S3, as you can tell. I have a section here just for bash scripts. We'll go ahead and copy this. S3 is a very important service, so it deserved all that attention. We'll go ahead and paste this in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and chmod this. Chmod. And I'm noticing that this is becoming unresponsive. This is a problem that I was continually having with Gitpod. And so what I found out is that I can just disable the extensions. So I'll go ahead here and just... I mean, we could try a reload as well. That might also just resolve it really quickly. Let's just say reload window. All right, and yeah, now I got control back. So if that ever happens to you, you can do that. I thought it was because I had 2 Vims installed. I do have like 2 Git graphs maybe installed. So there could, again, still be an issue with something that I have installed. What it is, I don't know. But yeah, it would take time to figure out what that process of elimination would be, eh? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and chmod this, and we'll say policy JSON, ls, ls-la. Okay, and so now I'm going to go ahead and just delete that file, make sure this still works. So we'll go ahead and delete it. And I'm just going to run convert here, convert, ls. Did I not chmod that? Maybe I didn't chmod it, and I thought I did. There we go. And so now that should produce that. So now we have a way of working with that. So that's really good. But anyway, the real question is, will the AWS CLI allow us access to S3? So down below, we'll just type in AWS. And if you don't have that prompting, there is a environment variable that you can look up in the docs for keeping auto prompt on. I'm going to go ahead and type in S3, and we'll say ls because I want to list all buckets. Notice I do not have access to list buckets. So the idea is that we want to attach this policy. And maybe the word convert is not great. I'm just going to rename this to update. Because the idea is that what we want to do is we want to update that policy. But first we need to create it. So I'm going to go over to the AWS CLI. And just Google it. We'll give Google a moment to catch up here. Excellent. We'll make our way over to S3. And in here, there should be a way to create the policy. So we'll go down, click here. We'll go, oh, this says S3. I want IAM, sorry. So go here and we'll go to IAM. And there should be a way of creating a policy. So we'll just say create policy. There we go, down here. We'll look at our examples. We'll grab this. And I'm going to go over to our README here. And paste this in. Create IAM policy. And our policy file is a JSON file. I'm going to call this my fun policy so we can remember what that is. If you get an error because you might already have one named that could occur, and you might just have to change the name. But yeah, that looks fine to me. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. says when creating policy, syntax error in the policy. So there's an issue with our policy. I'm gonna just carefully look at this here. Resources is spelled incorrectly. So go back over to this. And it's not supposed to be plural either. So we'll go ahead and try this again. And I'll run update. Okay, and then we will go ahead and try to create this policy again. An error occurred, malform policy document, syntax in the policy. So we'll go back to our policy and look at it in the JSON. So resource looks fine, action looks fine, effect looks fine. It all looks fine to me. So if we're ever having issues with our policies locally, we can always go over to AWS. We'll go to policies. There is like a policy analyzer. I'm not sure if that is gone or moved as AWS keeps changing things on us. But there definitely used to be a way of testing out policies to see what you had access for. But I can't find it, so I'm going to go ahead and just paste this in and see what it complains about. And there is a problem. Oh, it thinks there's an array. Okay, so really this is supposed to be a JSON object and not an array. So if we go back to our file here, we just take that out there, and then it'll actually probably generate out a JSON object. So let's go ahead and try this. Well, I want to do the update first. And again, this is hanging, so I'm going to go ahead and just, oh, there we go, it's back. So I'll do the update again. We'll take a look here. And so now it's just producing the JSON object, which is perfect. And we'll go ahead and attempt to run our policy JSON script again. And it's becoming unresponsive. So if you find this ever too unresponsive, you can just reload the window. But you know, again, I think it has to do something with one of my extensions. I'm not exactly sure which one. It's very frustrating. And I'm hoping it's not Gitpod, but I could go in here and probably like get rid of a few things. Yeah, not exactly sure what it is. I really don't like it. But we'll go ahead and we will just clear this out. I'm going to copy this again. Paste this in. We'll hit enter. Still doesn't like it. When creating the SID must be a alphanumeric. What's wrong with it? SID. Let's go back to this. Okay, we'll take this out. Okay. Is that better? SID, come on. So I think it doesn't like the spaces in here, so we'll just take those out. All right, and actually we've got to do that in our YAML file, so. All right, we'll just type in clear here, and we'll try this again. We'll update it first, of course. And then we'll create the IAM policy. There we go, so our policy is now created. Now the idea is that every time we change this, we want to update it. And so there should be like an update policy in here. Not exactly sure, but I have a feeling there probably is one. That or it's like create version. Update. Policy, so notice there's no update. So I think we saw it earlier. We saw create policy version. Creates a new version of the specified managed policy. To update a managed policy, you create a new policy version. Okay, fair enough. So we'll go down here, we'll copy this. And this time, this is going to be brought into our update script. And in here, we need to get our exact, the exact ARN here. So here's the ARN. I'm going to go ahead and copy that right here. We're going to hard code it, but you know, you could be a little bit more clever with it if you want to. I'm just trying to make this work here today. So we'll go ahead and paste that in. And so the idea is that we have our new policy document. It's always going to be policy like this. So we'll go ahead and save that. And so now the idea is that this doesn't attach it though. So that's one thing that we'll also have to do before we proceed forward, because I want to test that before we create our new policy. So go back to IAM. And we need to attach the policy to a user. So maybe there's like attach user policy. Here it is. And we really only have to do this once. So go down here below, and we'll go back to our documentation. Attach policy to user, and we'll paste this in. It expects the ARN, so we already have that right here. So we'll go ahead and copy that. And we'll paste it in. It's IAM. We'll continue, we'll leave, and we'll go to users, and we'll go to AWS examples. And we'll paste this in here. And we'll go ahead and copy this. And we'll paste it in, we'll hit enter. And so that should attach the policy to the user. If you type in AWS S3LS, it should now list any buckets if we have them. It says we still don't have access. Let's go make sure that this user actually has that permission now. So I'm gonna give this a refresh here. And we do have it attached. We expand it. It says S3 for everywhere. So we should have access to S3 because we just updated that. We'll try this again. There we go. So there was a little bit of delay for that to take effect, but it clearly is working. But you'll notice that this is very permissive. It's showing everything. If you don't have any S3 buckets, it would just show nothing there. So just understand that as long as you're not getting error, then it probably is working. Okay. But my thought here is that we want to iterate on this very quickly. And so what we'll do is I suppose we can, well, I guess our script is already done. My other thought was like, okay, do we want to always create out the JSON file and have it here? Because then it's kind of like sticking around. I was also thinking that we could pass the string here, because that is something that we can do. So that's what I would like to find out, is if I just take this line here, and if I were to do this, would this work? Really curious to see if that would work. So yeah, let's find out. It might not because I'm doing something really weird, but you know, it doesn't hurt to try. And so here, what I want to do is I just want to change this to not be for everything. So let's go over to S3 and look up permissions. See if we can find a list of it here. S3, it's actually actions. So you say S3 actions. I just want the list reference, okay? Let's try this here. There we go. I think this is it. And what I'm looking for is list. List bucket. This is not very helpful. So another way we can find them is if we go over here and let's just pretend that we're editing this policy. And if we go over to the visualizer here, if we expand it, it will show us all the actions. So if we go list, and let's say we wanted to be able to list bucket, that's what I was looking for, which was that. So we'll go here and just say list bucket. Okay, we've saved it. Now I want to see if our new script works as expected. So we'll go ahead and do an update here. I'm expecting it to fail because I have a feeling we're supposed to use xargs or pass it some other way. And I'm in another bash tab here. I'm going to go back up to here. And this one is still unresponsive, which is interesting, but I'm going to close that out. We're going to cd into the S3, not S3, IAM policy directory, and we'll just do that update here. And here's saying unknown options, because it didn't capture this as a string. So what I'm going to do is just put double quotations around this. Okay, and see if that fixes the issue. Cool. And I wasn't expecting it to be that easy, but we need to make sure that actually does work by refreshing this. And we'll expand our fun policy. And notice that we now have our update. So now we have a script. And I believe that when we update it, now we don't need to have a junk JSON file here. Okay, and so it is nice to have the JSON to analyze it, but we'll worry about that later, okay? And I'm just trying to delete this file for whatever reason. This thing is, again, it's struggling. I'm going to go ahead and give this a refresh. Yeah. I really thought I had fixed my Git pod issues, but I guess not. I've been fighting support on this, trying to get help. They're not very helpful, which is making me rethink Git pod. But anyway, we'll go back here, and I'm going to go ahead and try to delete this file again. And so now it instantly deletes, so that's really excellent here. But anyway, so we now have a means to rapidly update our files. Just because my Git pod's kind of acting funny, I'm going to go ahead and just update the progress. So WIP policy updater. And so we want to practice POLP, right? The principle of least privilege, right? And so what we could do is we could take it further by saying we only want to get access to a very specific bucket. So right now we're saying all resources, but I'm going to make my way over to S3 in a new tab here. And I just happen to have it here, so I'll click onto that. And we'll give this a moment. And what I'm going to do is create a new bucket. I seem to have a lot of junk buckets here, but we'll make a new one and call this bucket my cool bucket. We'll go all the way down to the bottom here. You know what? That's not going to work as a name. We'll say AB and then some random numbers. And we'll go ahead and create this bucket. This one's being created in US East 1. It doesn't really matter because we are, like it's a global service, so it should list out all buckets. So what I'm going to do is I want to get that specific ARN for that bucket. So if we go into here, it should list the ARN somewhere. If we go to permissions, no. I mean, we could assemble our own ARN. It's kind of annoying that I'd have to do that. Here's the ARN. There it is. And so we'll go back over to here to Git pod. And we'll paste it in. And so the idea is that it should only list out that bucket. Now I should say that different actions require different kinds of resource references. So if we wanted to see items in a bucket, we'd actually have to provide it a bit differently like here. But I'll just show you what I mean if I go over to the policy creator. So if I go and just create a new policy, we're not actually going to create one. We're just going to see what happens when we specify a couple options. So if we go to S3 here, and let's say I wanted to list. So I go list bucket, and I go down here. Notice it's saying, like, if you want to specify an exact bucket, you have to provide the bucket ARN. Okay, and so if I go here, I'd actually have to provide that bucket ARN there, the one we just did. Now if I checkbox any, it would do this. But it would want to have this value here. Okay, so we go add the ARN. Again, we're not doing this for real. And I'll just paste it in here. Okay, it could be that. But now let's say we wanted to read objects. Like get an object. Notice now it wants the object resource, and it wants the ARN structure for that. So we know what the bucket name is. It's my cool bucket. So I'm just going to copy this here. Right? And now it's saying, what object are you specifying? Often we say any object. And so that is what that's going to look like. And if we go and take a look at the JSON, you'll notice that we're specifying this for both of these. So this one's the bucket resource, and this is objects resource. And it's going to be for specific ones. You could break this statement up so that if you really wanted to be particular, you could take this and say, okay, I want this to be exactly what it's supposed to be. And you could go ahead and take the get object out of, or list bucket out of here, and then this one. So it's exactly that. And then you could go down here and say list bucket and then do that. The only thing I would say about that is, let me just get the comma off of there. This should be fine now. I think it doesn't like the fact that there's two SIDs with the same name. Just update that. There we go. And so you can do this. The only issue with having a lot of these statements is that there's a limit of how many statements you can have in a policy, I believe. The reason I know that is when we wrote our validators to test AWS, we hit restrictions on there. So let's just say policy limits IAM. Let's see if we can find that here. Statements. The maximum limit of attaching a managed policy. So there's, I guess, managed policies, but the interior. Is it just a character size limit? So it's not really calling out to what that issue is, but I just remember from experience that There were limits around here, whether it was character space or statements. Obviously, having multiple statements is going to add more characters, so the more compact you can make it, the better, but you have to strategically think about it and making sure you're not being over permissive for things that you should not be for. But let's go back over to here. And so we have our very specific bucket, which is great. And what I want to do is go ahead and save this, and let's do our update. We'll have to keep going back into here. Okay, and so now our policy should be updated. Let's confirm that. Let's go back over to our user and into AWS examples and down into my fund policy. And so that doesn't look updated to me. Let's give this a hard refresh because we cannot trust the console. Maybe the new console will have less of that issue there. And so we go down here. We have that resource is now updated. So let's go back over to Gitpod. And we're going to go ahead and type in AWS S3 LS. And let's see what it lists out. And so notice that it says access denied because we only have access to a single bucket. And in order to have access to all buckets, we actually have to give it a wildcard for the buckets. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay, so even though we're specifying that one resource, it's just not going to work for that that action there. Okay, you'd think that it would just list only the buckets you need, but let's go back and take the action, take a look at the actions and see exactly what. So we'll go here, and we'll go here, and we'll look for list bucket. And so notice it says grants permission to list some of all buckets, and then here we have the bucket wildcards. We'll click into that. And so, yeah, we'd have to have a wildcard on the bucket here. So let's go back here. And we'll modify this. And so now we're saying all buckets. Right? And I don't think there's any other option here. It's not like you could say list only 2 buckets and get those 2 buckets back, which I'm not sure why that is, but yeah. Okay. So we'll go back over to our policy. I'm just typing clear here, and we'll do that update. And we'll go over to AWS examples, and we'll give this a hard refresh because of course we know that this isn't instantaneous. So expand that. Okay, it was pretty quick. There we go, good. And we'll go back over to here, and we'll now try AWS S3 LS. And notice that it's not working. Give it another try. Give it another try. Give it another try. Okay, let's go back over here for a second. ARN, AWS, colon, S3, colon, colon, colon. Is it not supposed to have 3 colons? We copied it. We did what it told us to do. If you're wondering like why there's colons here, it's because normally there'd be like region, account, and other stuff in there, but right now we're just trying to get all of it. And if we're not confident about it, we can go back over to here and just double check. So what JSON object is this? This is for all of them. So I'm going to go here and just delete this and try this again because I want to just make sure that I'm writing that resource correctly. And so I'm going to go for list bucket, and we'll go down here, and I'll say any bucket. And that looks like what I'm providing, so I'm just, again, double checking. It's identical. Let's try this again. And it's telling us we don't have access. Why not? We're doing exactly what this policy is. We go over here, we take a look at this policy. It's the same policy. It's identical. We'll go back over to here. We'll give this a hard refresh. We'll make sure that policy is attached. It is. Okay, so let me list. All right, so this is where like you can run into issues where you know what you're doing, you know how to do this, but for whatever reason you don't get the result that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try this here. Really shouldn't have to do this, but we'll wildcard it, go back to normal. We don't have to have array, but we can. Another thing that we could do is we could just put it down the next line here, which is a lot nicer. That'll still turn into an array. We'll type in clear here, and I'm going to do an update. I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to give this a hard refresh. List bucket. Okay, good. Access denied. Access denied. I'm going to type in AWS STS get caller identity because I feel like there's something weird going on here. No, it's the right user. So all I can think of is it's not propagating. Just give me a second to figure this out. All right, so what I've been trying to find is the policy simulator, which I haven't been able to find it via the UI. It used to be easy to find. It was like right around here. I wonder if it still exists. I'm going to click on this link here that I found. Here it is. Super old, but I mean, it's always been a really useful tool. So I'm really surprised that they've kind of like shuffled this into nowhere. So I can click on AWS examples, and we have our policies attached here. And the idea is that I can ask if I have certain access to certain things. So I go ahead and I type in S3, and we'll go to list. I couldn't search it, but we'll go down here and find list. Bucket, right? And so then we're going to say run the simulation, and it says I'm allowed to access this. Okay, so again, this is just a sanity check going, why doesn't this work? Because clearly it should. We're going to make our way back over to here, and we'll try this again. And it says list access denied. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this. And I'm going to stop this workspace. I'm going to start it up again. I want to just see if I somehow magically have access, because there's nothing that should be preventing me to list out buckets, because the IAM policy simulator says I have access. I clearly have attached access. So it should just work. But we'll just give it a moment to shut down there. And I'm going to just go ahead and launch up a new one. And hopefully we might get some kind of different result. I'm just trying to rule out, was there like some kind of weird caching that's going on my side with the AWS client. All right, so we'll go down here. We'll just type in AWS S3 LS. Okay, this is crazy. It's like the easiest action. But this is what I talk about when we say cloud is hard, because you could be doing everything right and it just doesn't work. So what I'll do is I want to go to this. This is my fund policy. I'm going to go back to continue here. And I'm going to check this here. All resources, full access. My fund policy. We'll edit this. S3. We'll go to the visualizer. Okay, we'll do it visually. That way there's no way we're doing it wrong. Okay, we'll say list bucket. What the heck is list all my buckets? Grants permissions to list all buckets owned by the authenticated sender. Oh, okay. And then we have all. I'm going to check the policy. It didn't do exactly what I wanted. We'll go back here. I really don't like using the policy creator, but it gets really good for debugging. We'll say all possible buckets. We'll go back here. There we go. We'll go down and hit next. We'll save those changes. Before a managed policy can have up to 5 versions. Before you create a new version, you must delete a version. Okay, so that's probably, I don't say that would be related, but obviously that is a problem for us. So we need to delete previous versions. I didn't know that, because unless you are constantly frequently updating, like here in a video, you wouldn't know. So we'll go ahead and see how we can delete previous versions. Delete. Policy version. We'll go down to examples. And then we have that version number. So we'll go over here and we'll take a look and see what kind of versions we have. My fund policy, policies. So how do we know where the versions are? Over here we have policy versions. How do we know what the version ID is? I guess just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's just see if we can delete it first. Notice that we can't delete the latest one because that's the default one. So I'll go back over here. I'm going to just paste this in here for a second. Make our way back over to IAM. We'll go to policy here. We'll go to policy. Oh, sorry, the README. Deleting policies. Also, I kind of wonder if, like, when you're working in AWS console management console, if it just automatically deletes old versions. Because I think that would be really interesting. Because it might, right? Because, like, I just thinking, like, every time I update it in the console, like, I never hit a limit. So what's going on here? So we'll go ahead and do this. We'll say we want to delete version 1. I'm just going to make this a little bit easier and put this on one line. And I'm going to just say version 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's see if we can just run them all. I don't know if, like, when you delete one, if the version 2 becomes version 1. Let's try this out. Okay, we'll go back over to our policy. We will give this a refresh here. And so this is our latest version here. Again, looks correct to me. There's nothing else it could be, right? And we'll type in AWS S3. Again, I'm just going to see if it works for some weird reason now. Still doesn't. Okay, great. We'll go back over to here and go to permissions, and we'll edit this. We'll go to the visualizer. We'll delete this out. We'll go back to S3. All S3 actions. Let's just give it full access here, okay? Not very POLP of us. And I want to go back over to here, and I want to test this again. Okay, something really is up because there's no way we don't have any access whatsoever. AWS STS get caller ID. Okay, be back in just a second. So I've checked out the user and it's still saying this for our policy. I'm gonna give this a refresh. Maybe it's just delayed. Okay, so that's not helping. I'm gonna go back and take a look at our policy. We'll filter this, and so we'll just see ones that are managed by us, customer managed ones. And we'll go down to my fund policy again. We'll check its permissions. Did we not save our update? Version 6. Oh, it's still just list. I thought we changed this to be everything. Delete, delete, permissions. We'll go ahead and edit this. We'll go back to the visualizer. I'm going to go and say all actions for now. We'll go next. We'll save the changes. We're going to check the policy versions. The latest one is version 7. We're going to expand it. It shows all actions here, everything. Access to everything, right? We'll go back to our user. We'll check this out. And we'll go down below here and take a look at our permissions. We have full permissions. Full permissions. And we'll go ahead and try this again. All right, so now we can list all buckets, which is insane. It makes me think like there's some additional permissions that we need to list out all buckets, which I don't know what we need to know because we had what we had. So what we'll do is we'll go back over to our policy. And I want to edit this. And I just want to take this part out. Okay. We'll hit next. We'll save the changes. So much for our script, eh? And so now we've updated this. I want to go back to the user. I'll give this a hard refresh. We'll drop this down. Now it's only listing out buckets. Let's go here and take a look and see if we still have our problem from before. Access denied. So it makes me think that we're missing additional permissions. So if we go back here, let's go take a look at list bucket. Grants access to list some of all the objects. And then these are the conditions that we can apply on it. Weird. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, here's one thought that I had, okay? what if, no, I don't think so. Because I was thinking the other thing is that what if I can't just list out buckets that I created? Like it's a bucket, but I don't have permission to create that. Like I'm not the creator of that bucket, but I don't think that's actually the problem. If we go, like I just want to show you what if I go over to S3, you can see how flustered I am with this because it's so easy to do and it's not working here today. So if we go to our bucket, there is a creator of this bucket, right? So if we go to properties, it should say who created it. Like there's an owner. I guess the owner would be the account and not the user. So I was just trying to determine whether like buckets were at the user level for ownership, but they're not. They're at the account level. That's what I remember them being. But it's really interesting that this is not working. The other thing I can think of, I mean, this seems really silly, but I'm gonna go ahead and just type in a region US East 1. Really doesn't seem like I should have to do that. No. So yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why it's not working, but it's a waste of time for us to fiddle with this all day long. So what we'll do is we'll just move on and we'll just give it access to the actual bucket itself. But it's a little bit disappointing that I couldn't get that to work. But you know, sometimes it's just how it is. Let's go over to our policies and we'll go ahead and go to our customer managed ones. And we'll go down to my fund policy. And in here, I'm going to edit this, and I just want to give it access to read objects, right? So if we go here, I want to read what's inside this bucket, so it's really get object that we're looking for. And then we'll go down below, and we'll say we'll allow it for any bucket, any object. And so what I really want to show is the fact that you could put additional conditions here. And so those are going to be really based on what we saw earlier, which was over here. So if we have get objects, you can see that these are types of conditions that we can put. There's also global conditions that we could restrict here. Okay, and so if we say add a condition, we could drop this down. And so I think everything that's listed here is what we're allowed to utilize. So, you know, some of these will expect like headers to be passed during the condition, or there could be other stuff here. Like you could restrict this on like, this would say only allow objects with this particular prefix to work. So this could be something, the string equals hello, right? And so now you have a policy that restricts the prefix there, which is interesting because you could also just do this, right? But anyway, this does provide some more flexibility. I'm a little bit bummed this didn't work out exactly how I wanted to, but I think that we learned enough about policies to understand how they work. I'm confident that you'll understand how conditions work, resource action, and we did get to play around with IAM policy simulator, which is a bit old, and dig up some other stuff. So, you know, I'm satisfied that we learned something sufficient, but, you know, again, it would have been nice if we could have automated this a little bit here. I'm just going to update this file here. And we'll go ahead and just clean up. It's going to just stop my workspace. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this bucket because I have enough buckets as it is. We'll go ahead and delete this bucket. Great. And I want to go ahead and just revert my user back to its original state where it had admin access. Remove that policy. And we'll go to our policies. Say my fund policy. And we'll delete that policy. Whoops. And we'll see you. Oh, nope. Almost done. Did I give this user admin access? Hold on here. There we go. And I'll see you in the next one, okay? Ciao.